Hello and welcome. I'm Ankit and you're watching the Daily News Simplified. This Daily News Simplified is your one stop solution for daily current affairs analysis. Here we cover three important newspapers that are the Hindu, Indian Express, and the Business Line. Now, as you can see in today's DNS, that is 22nd of April, we'll be covering seven important articles. But before moving forward, please make sure to like this video, and also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily current affairs DNS, which goes live at 6 p.m. without fail. Now, before taking much of your time, let me begin straight away with the first article, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article in the op-ed section highlights the challenges of renewable energy. Now, globally, especially since the dangers of climate change have come to fore, the global attention has been to shift away from thermal power and to more green, that is, renewable energy sources. Now, thermal power, especially the power which is generated using coal, it is a polluting source of energy because coal not just emits harmful greenhouse gases, but it also causes environmental pollution by emitting pollutants such as carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide. India is a no exception to this trend, and recently India has made sure to increase its capacity of power generation, especially through renewable energy sources, and these are many sources, be it solar power, wind power, or small hydropower, and other marginal sources such as geothermal energy. Now we'll be focusing primarily today on wind, solar, and hydropower energy, as these are the major chunk of resources which have been used to generate electricity in India. Now this topic, it is important from GS paper 3 perspective because the syllabus, if you can see, highlights infrastructure and energy. Further, questions have been asked on this topic, especially in the year 2022. As you can see, India has set a target of meeting its 50% of its energy needs through non-fossil fuel based sources. So a question appeared on similar lines and asked us to go into detail. So let us begin our today's discussion on renewable energy and what are the challenges, especially that India is facing in scaling up this renewable energy. Now, as you can see, renewable energy is an important source, especially as far as reducing the emissions of energy sector is concerned. And in this regard, India has made glorious achievements in the recent past because from, as you can see, India globally ranks fourth as far as installed capacity of renewable energy is concerned. In terms of solar energy as well as wind energy capacity, here also India ranks fourth. Whereas on the other hand, in terms of its share in installed capacity for power generation is concerned, renewable energy, it accounts for around 41.4% of total installed capacity. On the other hand, India recently it amended its nationally determined contribution to the United Nations framework for climate change. Now in this updated NDC, which was termed as Panchamrit, India highlighted that by the year 2030, India wants to generate total amount of energy through renewable energy by as much as 50%. And this is, I'm talking about the share of energy generation. As far as absolute capacity of energy generation is concerned, India wants to utilize non-fossil fuels based energy sources and it wants to scale this capacity to 500 gigawatts. And this will also be done by the year 2030 itself. So these are the two targets that were highlighted in the Panchamrit pledge by the government of India. So you can understand scaling up of renewable energy is an inevitable prospect in the recent times. Now, this scaling up has been possible because of government's initiative. And we'll discuss some of the initiatives right now. The most important initiative in this regard is National Green Hydrogen Mission. Because you can understand coal is not just used to generate electricity to power our homes, but coal is also used for other heating requirements, especially in energy intensive sectors like cement, steel plants, as well as aluminium plants. Now, all these industries, in order to fire up their blast furnaces, they require large amount of coal, which you can understand is a polluting source of energy generation. So, government of India, it wants to replace coal with the use of green hydrogen, because green hydrogen is not just a renewable source of energy, but it also reduces the amount of pollution in the atmosphere. So this is what National Green Hydrogen Mission is all about, which wants to make India self-sufficient as far as generation or production of green hydrogen is concerned. Further, agriculture sector of India, it is also a huge emitter of greenhouse gases like methane. Further, these agricultural pumps, they utilize electricity, especially from thermal power generation. And these electricity, they are provided by the government to farmers for free. So, in order to reduce the emissions, especially in the agricultural sector, the government wants to solarize these agricultural pumps through PM Kusum scheme. And in this scheme, the farmers, after they solarize their pumps, they'll be able to power these pumps through the use of solar energy themselves, thereby reducing the emission intensity of the agricultural sector. Now, third is that India has promoted or liberalized the foreign directed investment regime as far as renewable energy generation sector is concerned. And as much as 100% of FDI is permitted for increasing investment in this sector, and it will also lead to transfer of technology which will help Indian players to collaborate with global players in order to promote renewable energy technologies in India. Additionally, India currently depends on Chinese and Vietnamese imports as far as solar cells are concerned. So to reduce this import dependency, the government of India, it brought forward PLI scheme, which is a production linked incentive scheme to promote manufacturing of solar cells in the country. So not just this will create increased investments and employment in the manufacturing sector, but it will also help India reduce its current account deficit, which is due to increased imports from outside the country. Alternatively, government of India, it also realizes that renewable energy production can happen only in selected geographical locations in India. So after generating renewable energy, the government, it should also ensure transmission of this energy to intense consumption centers across the Indian geography. So this requires scaling up of transmission sector in the country. And in this regard, government has introduced green energy corridors which facilitates the transmission of renewable energy from one corner in India to another corner. Also, to scale up the global efforts in order to promote solar alliance or solar generation capacity across the world, India and France during the Paris Agreement of the year 2015, India and France, it got together and formed what was known as International Solar Alliance. Now, this Solar Alliance, it is a group of countries which are located near the equator region across the world. And these countries, they witness high amount of sun insolation throughout the year. So you can understand these countries, they are prime locations for generation of solar powers are concerned. So this alliance will not just scale up solar power across the world, but it also gives India the geopolitical heft in the community of nations. So these are the major initiatives that were taken by the government of India to promote renewable energy in the country. But even after this initiative, you can understand that India's installed capacity is just 41.4%, and it wants to take some more effort in order to reach this 50% target. So you can naturally understand there are some challenges which have been faced, especially in India, in case of scaling up of renewable energy requirements. So in this regard, let us understand what are the challenges faced in scaling up of renewable energy in India. Now, first and probably the most important challenge is the challenge related to supply and storage of renewable energy. Now, there is a term which is used quite frequently, which is known as intermittency. Now, this term, that is intermittency, it highlights that the generation of renewable energy, especially solar and wind, it does not happen round the clock, because naturally solar energy is only available during the daytime, and during the night time there's no possibility of generation of solar energy because there is no sun in the horizon. As far as wind energy is concerned, it can only be generated after the wind speed attains some higher amount of wind speed. So this is what you call the intermittency, that these sources, especially solar and wind energy, they are not available round the clock. So thereby the base power requirement of the country currently, it is fulfilled through thermal power, especially by use of coal as well as natural gas. Now these two sources, that is coal and natural gas, you understand these are fossil fuels. So also these are polluting in nature. So this is what you can understand the supply issue, because if you make the solar and wind energy the basis of your power generation, then the issue of intermittency will occur, that you will have to generate electricity during the downtime through other sources which are polluting in nature. Now also India lacks in terms of storage capacity of energy, because storage of energy which is generated during the peak times, it requires large amount of deployment of batteries. Now this is both a cost, this is not a cost effective affair. As you can understand, these batteries are quite expensive. So India does not have a architecture or infrastructure as far as storage of energy is concerned. So this is the primary issue as far as the renewable energy generation is concerned, because first of all it is not available round the clock, and even if you want to store these energy for use in non peak times, these are quite an expensive affair. Now also the second challenge is with relation to locational limitations. As I've already highlighted, these solar and wind energy, they can only be generated at a specific location. For example, in tropical areas such as southern states as well as western part of the country, these are more optimal as far as solar energy generation is concerned. Whereas higher altitude regions, especially in the northern Himalayas as well as northeastern part of the country, these are not ideal as far as solar power generation is concerned. Whereas on the other hand, these wind powers, they can be generated in areas which have high wind velocity. And these are offshore locations as well as onshore locations near the coastal areas. So you can understand these are locational limitations which prevent scaling up of renewable energy capacity. Further, these location limitations, they also entail high transmission cost, because you are generating electricity in one part of the country and then you're transmitting that energy across the country, which not just means higher cost in establishing transmission infrastructure, but it also means higher transmission losses. So this was locational limitation. Now let us understand the third factor, which is land acquisition. Now solar power can be generated using solar cells. Now these solar cells, they are installed across the land, which you can understand requires large amount of land areas. So to procure these lands from local people, it requires large amount of land acquisition by state and central governments. So also these land acquisition, it imposes what you can call social cost on the community, because these lands otherwise would be used for other productive activities, be it manufacturing, agriculture. So you're denying the people the benefits of these land, and then you're utilizing that land for generation of electricity. So this is what you can call a social cost is imposed on the society, and it leads to higher unemployment as well as lowers the development level of the area. Now this is the social cost associated with land acquisition. Further, the attempts to procure lands from farmers have also been met by resistance from farmers. So these are the challenges associated with land acquisition. That first state has to acquire land and it faces resistance. And even if the land is acquired, it imposes several social costs on the local people. Now, another factor that highlights the challenge respect to scaling up of renewable energy is the import dependency. And this primarily is related to imports of solar cells from locations such as China as well as Vietnam. Now, the solar cells that are manufactured in these countries, they are quite cheap in nature. That's why domestic solar power companies, they prefer to import solar cells from outside the country. Now, this has several implications. First of all, it increases imports in a country, thereby increasing the current account deficit. Further, it also leads to depreciation of Indian rupee. Although India is importing cheap solar cells from China, but it also gives China a geopolitical leverage over India in respect to its other negotiations. So, this is what import dependency of solar cells is all about. Now, let us understand what are the costs associated with installation of renewable energy projects. And I'll give you a simple example. For example, for every megawatt, if you want to install thermal power project, it costs about rupees 4 crore per megawatt. This is for thermal power projects. Now, as far as solar power projects is concerned, it requires the investment of as much as rupees 18 crore per megawatt. So you can understand the cost of installation as far as solar project is concerned vis-a-vis thermal project, it is about 4 times more. So this high cost of installation is again a prohibitive factor which prohibits penetration of renewable energy in India. Now, the installation as well as maintenance of renewable energy, it requires large amount of skilled workforce. Now you can understand these renewable energy projects, these are majorly located in rural and semi-urban areas of the country. And these areas, they primarily witness deficit in skilled labor workforce. So these skilled labor workforce, which is very much essential for upkeep as well as maintenance of solar projects, this is quite a big challenge as far as rural areas are concerned. So these are the 6 challenges that I have highlighted, which can be understood with respect to scaling up of renewable energy is concerned. So in this regard, let us understand what can be the ideal road ahead for increasing the penetration of rural energy in India. And I have picked up these points from today's news article. So you do not need to make a separate note and you can follow today's discussion for a comprehensive overview of issues related to renewable energy sector. Now, most of the renewable energy projects currently in the country, they are either owned by private sector or the government, which is public sector. Now, today's news article, it highlights that there is a need to explore alternative ownership models because this ownership model, be it private or public, it excludes the local community from benefits of renewable energy. So in case the community, it owns the renewable energy project, it will not just make that community more developed, but it will also create employment for the members of this community. So this is an alternative way forward which will reduce the grievances of local community and will also make it easier for government and renewable energy power projects to acquire the land in a more effective manner. Further, according to environmental regulations that exist currently, these renewable energy projects, they are exempted from the need of conducting either environmental impact assessment or social impact assessment. Now these impact assessment, they are very much needed for any project in order to understand what will be the social and economic impact of a particular project. And based on these estimations, these projects are either given a go ahead or are prevented from implementation. But as far as renewable energy is concerned, these are exempted from conducting of environmental impact assessment and social impact assessment. So this the adverse consequences as far as establishing renewable energy is concerned, be it environmental pollution, noise pollution, or economic exclusion, is an adverse consequence of renewable energy. So today's news article, it highlights that there is an inherent need to limit the adverse consequences of renewable energy projects. So in this regard, the article highlights that both environmental impact assessment as well as social impact assessment should be conducted for renewable energy projects as well, as these are necessary to understand the adverse consequences and further reduce these adverse consequences. Alternatively, the article, it also highlights that there is a need to engage the local governments and their decision making, especially with respect to implementation of this project. First of all, these projects are planned by the government as well as executed or implemented by the government. But when in these planning and execution activities, you also include local government, it increases the inclusion of local community. Further, whatever decision will be made by local government, it will also be democratic in nature, which will mean a greater acceptance across the community. So, this is very much necessary as far as reducing the roadblocks of renewable energy projects are concerned. Further, the article, it also highlights the inclusion of use of renewable energy in the agricultural sector. Now, this is very much necessary as I have already highlighted that agricultural sector is a major emitter of greenhouse gases. And especially in agricultural sector, the energy is used to power irrigation facilities. So schemes such as PM Kusum, which looks to solarize the agricultural sector, it is an ideal way forward by integrating both agricultural sector with renewable energy generation. So this is what the article highlights. Also, as I've already understand, skilling and training of workforce is a major issue as far as rural and semi-urban areas are concerned. So this article highlights that skilling and training program should be undertaken for poor and vulnerable section of the Indian society. And in this regard, example of Solar Mamas, which is a program of the government of Tanzania, can be taken. Now in Tanzania, women who belong to illiterate or semi-literate sections of the society, they are being trained as solar mamas and they'll be responsible for installation of solar power projects in the rural areas. So similar training can be done for people of India as well in order to increase the penetration of solar power in rural areas. Understood. So there is a need to explore alternative ownership models, especially giving ownership to the community. We also have to limit the adverse consequences of renewable energy projects. We have to increase the engagement, especially with that of local governments. We have to integrate agricultural sector with renewable energy sector. And we also have to ensure skilling and training of India's workforce. So this is the ideal way forward as far as trying to deal with the risk or challenges of renewable energy is concerned. Understood. So this was all for today's discussion on the first article. And with this, we move to the second article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Hindu text and context section. Now, this article, if you look closely, highlights that India has witnessed fall in household savings. Now, these household savings, they are important because these household savings, when they are deposited in financial institutions of the country, it increases the money multiplier of the economy. Now, this money, when deposited in a financial institution like bank, then the banks, they utilize this money to extend loans for other productive economic activities. Hence, this money which you deposited in the bank account, it creates a positive effect in increasing the demand all across the economy. So naturally, you can understand that fall in these household savings has implications for Indian economy in general. Understood? Now let us take a close look at the graph which is given in the article. Now if you look closely, the article or the graph, it highlights that Indian household, they are witnessing rising burden of the debt. Now there are few metrics which are given in this article. First is gross financial savings, which includes savings from household sector, private companies, as well as the savings of government departments, which are known as public savings. Now, among these three components, household savings is the largest component. So, you have to understand what are the implications of household savings in Indian economy, and what if these household savings they reduce? What are the implications then on the Indian economy? Now, this article, it gives the term net financial savings. Now, this net financial savings is the difference between gross financial savings and the borrowings made by the various sectors in India. Now, naturally, you can understand more is this borrowing, the lesser will be the net financial saving in the economy. So, the rising debt burden, as the article highlights, it means that the borrowings, especially in the household sector, are increasing, and it has reduced the net financial savings in the economy to a 4-decade low here. So you can understand this has implication all across the economy. Now this topic, it is important from GS paper 3 syllabus, because you can understand Indian economy and issues related to mobilization of resources is given in the syllabus, and these financial savings, especially that of household sector, it is an important form of resource as far as Indian economic growth are concerned. Further, questions related to similar topics such as savings rate have been asked by UPSC before in the mains examination. Case in point, this 2017 PYQ. So you can understand such questions, they are important from UPSC mains perspective as well. Now in this regard, let us understand what are the factors behind reducing the economic sustainability of Indian household. Because of decline in household savings, Indian household has been much like Sandeep Bhaiya of the web series Aspirant. Now, all of those who have seen the web series Aspirant, you understand that the particular aspirants has a reduced financial capacity. And this has been much the case as far as Indian households are concerned. Now, Indian household, they have witnessed reduction in their financial savings because of many reasons. First of all, Indian households, they utilize their savings to finance their consumption expenditure. And these consumption expenditures, they include spendings on social events such as marriages, on their day-to-day expenses such as on food, recreation activities, and these require some kind of consumption expenditures. So whenever the households, they utilize their saving to make these consumption expenditures, it reduces the net amount of financial savings of the household. Further, households, they can also utilize these net financial savings to invest in physical assets such as properties, as well as purchasing of gold. Now, these physical assets, they are kind of an investment. So, these are desirable as far as Indian economy is concerned. Also, as you can understand, when an Indian household take or undertakes a loan, they have to return that loan in form of interest payments and principal amount. So, the larger the amount of loans which is taken by household sector, you can understand larger is the interest burden of the household. Now, if this interest burden is large, it means that the household will reduce its consumption expenditure as well as reduce the amount they invest in physical assets. So, according to today's article, the amount of financing taken, especially on consumption expenditure, and the amount of investment done on physical assets, they have been stagnant as far as few last years are concerned. Whereas on the other hand, the amount of interest payments which are made by Indian household, it has increased by a significant amount in past year. So this is the primary reason, that is interest payments. These are the primary reason for reduction in net financial savings as far as Indian households are concerned. Now let us understand what are the implications of higher debt burden on Indian households. Now these Indian households, as you can understand, they require large amount of funds. Now whenever these funds they are less with Indian households, then that Indian household are forced to take loans from the financial institutions such as banks and non-banking financial companies. So whenever the amount of loans is large as far as households are concerned, it also means that there is an increased risk as far as returning of those loans are concerned. So larger amount of loans means larger amount of risk associated with repayment of those loans. So whenever a particular household or a group of household they are unable to return the loans, it means that the banking sector of the country, it becomes more risk apprehensive. And in this regard, the banking sector of the country, it will reduce their credit loan in order to reduce the chances of non-performing assets happening in the sector. So whenever the risk of non-returning of the loans are concerned, the banking or the banking sector, they will make sure that they will reduce the credit growth. And by reducing the credit growth, the bank will want to reduce the risk associated with loans going bad are concerned. So this financial fragility as far as India's banking sector is concerned, it increases with increasing amount of debt burden on Indian household. Now this financial fragility, it reduces the levels of development in the economy, because bank when they extend loans for consumption and investment purposes, it spurs the economic growth of the country. So whenever the financial institutions of a country become fragile, it negatively affects the economic growth of the country. Understood? Now also increasing loans by Indian household sector, which will also mean increasing in the amount of interest payments. So in order to pay interest regularly, the household they'll look to reduce their consumption demand as far as their regular day-to-day expenses are concerned. So whenever the consumption demand of Indian household goes low, this creates increasing chance of unemployment in the country, which also in a way reduces the amount of revenue collection of Indian government are concerned. So you can understand reducing demand of consumption requirements has a potential to create unemployment in the country, and also has the potential to reduce the amount of revenue collection by the government. Further, let us understand how this reduced consumption demand and increased financial fragility, it also declines the amount of investment done in the Indian economy. Now this investment, which is primarily in terms of capital expenditure, it is a key driver of economic growth in any economy. So whenever this investment declines, it reduces the chance of economic growth in the country, thereby having long term implications on Indian economy. So higher debt burden by virtue of higher amount of loans taken by a household, it reduces the financial stability of Indian household, which also means increasing the fragility of India's banking system. It reduces the amount of money which is spent by the household on their consumption requirements, thereby creating chances of unemployment and reduced revenue collection. Further, it also reduces the amount of capital expenditure in the economy, thereby harming the amount of economic growth in the country. So, this is the implication of reduced financial savings of Indian household. Now, let us move to another set of articles. The first of which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper, the Indian Express, as well as the Business Line newspaper. Now, this article highlights that India's direct tax collection has risen up by as much as 18% in the concluding financial year, that was financial year of 2023 to 2024. Now, taxation collection, especially in a particular year, it is not that much important as far as UPSC prelims are concerned. Because from this PYQ of the 2017 prelims examination, you can see that UPSC has a keen interest on revenue collection, but this revenue collection, the UPSC makes sure to ask the broader trends in the revenue collection and not the collection in a particular year. So from this question, you can infer that the UPSC asked tax revenue collection in the last decade. Additionally, asking the amounts of fiscal deficit, whether it has increased or decreased in the last decade. So as far as prelims are concerned, aspirant, it requires to understand the broader trends in the revenue collection in the economy and not the yearly figures. Understood. So this revenue collection, it is an important part of government budgeting as well as a resource for mobilization of resource in the economy. So this topic, it is important from GS paper 3 perspective. Now let us understand what are the broader trends as far as India's tax receipts are concerned. Now I've picked up this graph from this year's interim budget in order to make you understand the broader trends in the tax collection as far as Indian economy is concerned. Now you can understand there are two forms of taxes: direct taxes such as corporate income tax, personal income tax, and as well as indirect taxes such as custom duties as well as GST. Now government, it collects both of these taxes and they form total taxes as far as taxation receipts are concerned. Now, as you can understand from previous year question, UPSC makes sure to understand the broader trends in the taxation collection. So we have curated a practice question here which asks questions related to tax collection in the economy. So let us understand what are the broader trends and what are the inconsistencies in these broader trends in the past few years. Understood? Now, as you can see from this graph, the tax revenue with percent of India's GDP is concerned, it is not a continuous increase or decrease. Because in the financial year of 2018 and 19, you can see there was some economic slowdown in the Indian economy. So it reduced the amount of tax collection by the government. And this collection, which is reduced collection of tax revenue, it continued in the financial year of 2020 and 21 because of COVID-19 pandemic. So after the economy, it opened from the lockdown, then the government taxation receipt, it saw an increase. However, this further reduced in 2023 and then it further increased in the year of 2023 and 24. So you can understand the revenue collection trend has not been consistent in the past decade. As far as share of both direct and indirect taxes are concerned, broadly, the share of direct taxes has been more than that of indirect taxes. But there's also an inconsistency in this regard. Because if you look closely in the financial year 2016 and 17, as well as in financial year of 2020 and 21, the share of indirect taxes, they were more than that of direct taxes. So the share of indirect taxes, it was more in than direct taxes in these 2 years. Whereas in the rest of the years, the direct taxes, they were more than indirect taxes. So these are the important inconsistencies that I've already highlighted in the taxation receipts and their trends in the Indian economy. So understood. Now with this information, let us now solve the practice question. With reference to tax collection, consider the following statements. The first statement, tax revenue as a percentage of GDP in India has steadily increased in the last decade. Pay close attention to the wordings that I have given in the practice question. The first statement, it says that the taxation revenue as a percentage of GDP has steadily increased. Now, this is an incorrect statement. As I've already highlighted, there was some inconsistencies that the collection it reduced in these 2 financial years, and it only increased after the lockdown restrictions were removed. So this is an incorrect statement because India's tax collection reduced in these 2 years. Now, second statement, it states that collection of direct taxes have continuously surpassed indirect taxes in the last decade. Again, this is an incorrect statement because I've already highlighted in these 2 financial years, the collection of indirect taxes, they were more than that of direct taxes. So this is an inconsistency in the trend. So please make sure to remember that. As these both statements are incorrect, thereby option D is the right answer to this practice question. Understood? Now let us move to the second article of the day, which also appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now this article is about a Kashan style carpet which is manufactured in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now this Kashan style of carpet weaving, it originated in the city of Kashan, which is located in the modern day Iran, and it has brought to India by some king. So this was not originated in India. However, as it is currently being made in Jammu and Kashmir, so this is important as far as India's cultural heritage are concerned, because crafts and heritage with respect to Indian states have been asked by UPSC before. Especially in the year 2018, you can see this question on shawls, embroidery and saris and their respective states. So this news article, it is important from prelims perspective. Now let us understand what are the origin of these Kashan rugs and how are they made in the city or in the union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, as you can understand, these Kashan rugs, they originated in the Kashan city, which is located in the modern day Iran. Now, these are hand knotted carpets which are locally in Iran known as kalbafi. So, please make sure to remember this particular term because terms associated with ancient and medieval history is also asked by UPSC before. Further, the Sultan, which was Zainuddin, he brought these carpet weavers from then Iran and then he brought them to Kashmir to train the local inhabitants. So naturally, Kashmir has been creating carpets such as Kashan carpets, Kimran, Tabriz, Shafan, Meshad as well as Bokhara carpets. So these are types of carpets. Further, these Kashan rugs, they are renowned for their intricate design and cultural significance. As these have intricate medallion designs which may be either oval or circular in design. They have portrayed of various animals and birds, as well as they also have carvings which enable them to resemble a medal. So these are the important features of Kashan rugs. Further, these Kashan rugs, they have rich color palette, be it deep red, blue, ivory. And the important aspect or important hallmark of these Kashan rugs that they have a fine knot density, which makes them quite popular as far as Indian cultural heritage are concerned. So in this regard, let us now solve the practice question. Now, Kashan style employed in carpet making, it originated in Jammu and Kashmir, which again is an incorrect statement. As I've already highlighted, these originated in the contemporary Iran, which is Kashan city. Now, Kimran and Mashhed are well-known types of carpets produced in the state of Gujarat, which again is an incorrect statement because Kashan and Meshd, these are carpets which are produced in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. So, based on the discussion, we can conclude that option D is the right answer as these both statements are incorrect. Now, let us move to the third article in the prelim section, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper, that is last page of Science and Technology. Now this news article, it highlights that the monkeypox virus has used what is known as genomic accordion to evolve and infect human beings. Now various viruses, be it COVID virus or monkeypox virus, they are subjected to frequent mutations. Now these mutations, these include changes in their genomic structure, which enables them to move from host to host in a more effective manner. Further, these mutations in the viruses, they enable them to reproduce faster and enable them to adhere to the surface of host target cells in a more better manner. Thereby, it helps these viruses to evade our immune system and vaccines, which can be easily understood with respect to variants of COVID 19 viruses. Because Delta and Omicron variants of COVID 19 viruses, it enabled the original strain of COVID 19 virus to become more potent. That means that Delta and Omicron virus, they were more harmful to human immune system as far as effects on human immune system are concerned. So this is an example of virus mutations and how these mutations make viruses more potent in nature. Now, this it is an important aspect as far as GS paper 3 is concerned because the syllabus highlights awareness in the fields of biotechnology. Further, these virus and their mutations, it was in news before in the past few years because naturally due to COVID-19 pandemic. Further, important viruses that are in news such as Zika virus was asked by UPSC in the year 2017. So this monkeypox virus is also important from prelims perspective. So in this regard, let us understand what is this monkeypox virus. Now, this is a viral zoonotic disease which is caused by a DNA virus. Now, the symptoms of these disease, they include rashes, lesions, which may be concentrated on face, palm of the hand, or in the thigh area of the human. Further, the transmission of these virus, it happens through mainly from people to animal because animals, they are primary carriers of these virus, and due to interaction between human and animals such as consumption of meat or bites and scratches by animals, it leads to transmission of these viruses from animals to humans. Further, human to human transmission of these viruses are also possible because in cases of contact with infected respiratory droplets or bodily fluids, it leads to transmission of these viruses from one human to another. So the transmission of these viruses, it happens both from animal to humans and from human to other humans. Further, there is no specific treatment which has been approved for Mpox virus is concerned. Now, in most cases of monkeypox, these are self-limiting nature, which can be eradicated through self-treatment. Further, US Food and Drug Association, it has approved two smallpox vaccines such as Genos and ACM 2000 that might help in preventing monkeypox as well. However, there is no specific virus for monkeypox vaccine in the Indian market. So this is an important development and please make sure to remember this. So in this regard, let us now solve the practice question. With respect to monkeypox, consider the following statements. First statement, monkeypox is a virus which is caused by RNA virus, which again is an incorrect statement because I have already highlighted here it is caused by a DNA virus and not an RNA virus. Now the second statement, the disease, it is characterized by rash or skin lesions, which again is a correct statement because symptoms of these disease, it includes rashes and skin lesions. Now the third statement, it highlights sexual transmission of disease is not possible, which again is an incorrect statement because in addition to animal to human transmission, this virus, they can also be transmitted between one human to another human through either in with contact with respiratory droplets or exchange of bodily fluids, which can happen through sexual route. So as only second statement is a correct statement to this practice question, hence option A is the right answer for this model question. Now let us move forward to the fourth article in prelim section, which highlight or which appeared in the Indian Express explained section. Now this news article, it highlights that US National Oceanic Authority, it has highlighted the onset of fourth mass global coral bleaching event. Now this coral bleaching is an event which is characterized by moving out of zooxanthellae algae out of coral polyps. Now let us understand how these coral bleaching events take place. And further, these events, they are important as far as prelims are concerned, because in the prelims of the year 2018, you can see a question appeared on coral reefs. Further, geophysical features and their locations and changes in critical geophysical features and their effect on flora and fauna are important from GS paper 1 syllabus. Further, distribution of coral reefs is given in the geography syllabus. Hence, it is important from prelims perspective. So, in this regard, we'll understand how, what, and why of coral bleaching. Now, let us first understand how these coral bleaching events take place. Now, these corals, they are nothing but coral polyps which are carbonaceous in nature, and they exist on the surface of sea surface. So, these are sessile materials. So, these coral polyps, these exist in sea surfaces and they're inhabited by an algae called zooxanthellae. So these algae, that is zooxanthellae, these inhabit these coral polyps, and these both species, they exist in what is called as an symbiotic relationship. That first of all, these zooxanthellae algae, they provide colors to these coral polyps which are otherwise white in nature. And these coral polyps, they provide protection to these algae, hence highlighting the symbiotic relationship. Now, this symbiotic relationship is very much essential as far as coral reefs are concerned. So, the colors which you can see in the coral reefs are due to this zooxanthellae algae. So, whenever the disturbance in the marine ecosystem takes place, these zooxanthellae algae, they leave these coral polyps and they move out of these coral polyps, thereby leaving these coral polyps alone. And now naturally, as these coral polyps are white colored in nature, hence these disturbances, they are highlighted in what is called as bleaching of corals. So this is a stressed event which stresses the corals, thereby disturbing this very symbiotic relationship that exists between zooxanthellae on one hand and coral polyps on the other. So this is what coral bleaching is all about. Now that we have understood how coral bleaching takes place, let us now understand what is this mass coral bleaching event. Now this coral bleaching, it is not a first event in the history, because as far as coral bleaching events are concerned, there have been 4 major coral bleaching events. The first event, it occurred in 1998, and in this event, as much as 20% of world's coral reefs, they were affected. Now, this second and third coral bleaching effect, it happened in the decades of 2010s. And as you can understand, the coral bleaching event has gotten only more severe with passage of time. So this fourth onset of coral bleaching event, it is reported across 54 countries, which is located in the Atlantic Ocean, in Pacific Ocean, as well as in Indian Ocean. Now, as you can understand, climate change events, it increases the surface temperature across the globe. So be it land or water bodies, the surface temperatures of these land and water bodies, it also increases due to climate change events. So this elevated temperatures across the ocean regions, it is a major cause for coral bleaching effects. Because on one hand, these coral reefs, they are very much sensitive as far as water temperatures are concerned. And whenever the water temperature, it increases even by a small amount, it creates stresses in the coral reefs across the oceans, thereby increasing these coral bleaching events. So this coral bleaching, it happens primarily due to elevated sea surface temperature, and further it is increased or enhanced by rising emissions due to heat trapping greenhouse gases. Because as much as 90% of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, it is absorbed by world oceans. So whenever these greenhouse gases, they are absorbed by water bodies such as oceans, it increases the sea surface temperature of oceans, thereby making the coral reefs more prone to bleaching events. Understood? So to summarize, climate change event, it increases the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which increases the amount of sea surface temperature of oceans. Now, this increase in sea surface temperature also increase the instances of coral bleachings. Understood? So, this is the Y aspect of coral bleaching. Now, based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. With reference to corals, consider the following statements. The first statement, corals are sessile animals which floats permanently on the ocean surface. Now, this statement is incorrect because corals, although are sessile animals, however, by sessile animals, it means that they are live permanently on the sea surfaces and not ocean surfaces. So, this is an first statement is incorrect. Now, second statement, El Nino, it leads to enhanced chloral bleaching. Now, this is correct because as you can understand, El Nino, it is a geophysical event which increases the temperature of world water bodies. Now, naturally, as you can understand, increase in sea surface temperature will mean increase in bleaching events. So, this second statement is a correct statement because the El Nino, it leads to increased coral bleaching. Now, the third statement, coral bleaching, they are taking place in Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, but not in Indian Ocean, which again is an incorrect statement because as I've already highlighted the fourth, which is the current event of coral bleaching, it is happening in Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, as well as Indian Ocean as well. So, as only statement 2 was correct, thereby option A is the right answer to this practice question. Now, with this, let us move to the last article, which appeared in the op-ed section of the in the Business Line newspaper. Now, if you look closely, the op-ed section, it highlights that according to reports given by the IMF, that is Global Financial Stability Report, Fiscal Monitor and World Economic Outlook report, it has highlighted increased risk to world economy, especially due to Israel-Hamas war, as well as increasing inflation across many countries. Now, reports by major global bodies such as IMF, World Bank, they are subjected to frequent questions as far as UPSC prelims are concerned. Point being, in prelims of the year 2019, you can see a question appeared on Global Competitiveness Report, which is a report of the World Economic Forum. So, in this regard, let us discuss what are the major reports by International Monetary Fund. Now, Global Financial Stability Report, World Economic Outlook, as well as Fiscal Monitor, which is given in the article, they are published by the International Monetary Fund. So, based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following reports: Global Financial Stability Report, Fiscal Monitor, World Economic Outlook, and Global Economic Prospects. Now, how many of the reports which are mentioned above, they are released by the International Monetary Fund? Now, as you can understand, these three reports, that is 1, 2, and 3, they are published by IMF, whereas this Global Economic Prospects report, it is published by World Bank. So, correct answer to this practice question is option C as 1, 2, and 3 are correct and 4th is incorrect. Understood? So, this was all for today's discussion in the today's DNS. Please stay tuned with Raus IAS YouTube channel for more updates, and we'll see you again tomorrow sharp at 6 p.m. for more daily current affairs analysis. So until then, I bid you a very good night.